Welcome to Raising Deaf Kids. So, visual systems, are you doing them yet? These are so easy to put together and have been a game changer in our house for communication with seriously all of our kids, even my typical hearing child. And when kids are learning language, and especially when they are younger kids, language is going to break down. That's 100% going to happen at some point. And then frustrations are going to happen. That's also 100% going to happen. Right, so using visual systems in your home is a great way to not only help your kids learn language faster, but also to help with understanding and comprehending you when those language skills are lacking or breaking down. Oh, I cannot wait to share with you in this episode what has been working in our home and hopefully give you some ideas for what can work in your home too. So let's get started. Hey, Mama. Welcome to Raising Deaf Kids. Do you want more ease in your daily life? Do you want to help your child learn language faster but have no idea where to start? Do you find yourself searching for how to learn sign language and best ways to practice speech goals? Hey, I'm Alaine. I'm a mom of 3 littles, 2 of whom are deaf. I remember when I received the hearing loss diagnosis for our child, there were so many decisions and information overload. I lacked clarity and confidence and yearned for ease and balance in our lives. It was then that I discovered strategies to support our kids' language development at home, and I even helped them learn language faster. I can't wait to share it all with you. So put down that to-do list, close out that ASL app for now, and let's get started. Did you know that I have a free community of women just like you? Busy moms who want to help their kids learn language faster while still getting all of the things done in the house each day. In the community, we share strategies to help our kids learn language faster and lean on each other for encouragement and support in this up and down journey of hearing loss with your kids. If you haven't found your community yet, then welcome home, Mama. Come join us at facebook.com/group/raisingdeafkids. I know what it feels like to be frustrated and a little sad over your kids' language skills. There were times when my kids were learning language at the beginning, and still sometimes this happens, when I could see that they wanted to tell me something, but they couldn't actually tell me. They would start crying and get frustrated, and I really felt for them. I felt sad and a bit defeated that language came so much later for my kids and was so much more work for my kids than with other typical hearing kids. And at this particular time in our language learning hearing loss journey, I also really resisted using visual systems in our home and at school. Even though our speech therapist and the preschool teachers repeatedly recommended visual systems for us to use at home, I did not want to. And really, I had a lot of misinformation, and I thought that by relying on a visual or a picture, that my kids would learn to rely on the picture and not actually learn the language. But I am here to tell you, boy, was I wrong. When I finally bit the bullet and tried visual systems in my home, I was really surprised that my kids' language skyrocketed. And they were a lot more calm because they could communicate with me in another way when that language broke down a little bit. And unfortunately, I think this is still not talked a lot about for deaf and hard of hearing kids. So most professionals will just tell you to learn sign language as a visual system for your deaf and hard of hearing child, which is fine. But that also takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time to learn sign language. Yes, you could learn a few individual signs pretty quickly, but that still doesn't necessarily give you like the whole picture of communication. And I also have a really hard time with professionals and other people telling parents of deaf and hard of hearing kids like you, oh, just go learn sign language, as if that's not a huge thing to do, because it is. And maybe you're doing it at your home, fantastic. And there's different ways to do it, different levels of learning sign language. We talk about it on the podcast. I won't get into specifics today, but I will say that using other visual systems, you can implement faster and get results with your kids and even your kids' language even faster than learning sign language. And also, interestingly, visual systems are used for kids with other disabilities like autism and Down syndrome. And those communities, it's the norm to kind of use visual systems and really like applaud each other for doing that. And, I think the deaf and hard of hearing world, just my opinion, is really missing the mark and doing a disservice to parents by not helping them create more visual systems in the home that don't just rely on sign language. So that's why I'm here today to tell you that we use other visual systems in our home to increase communication and understanding in our kids. And it's been proven in my home with my three children to be highly effective in helping them learn language faster and helping them communicate and assign meaning to words when they didn't know the word yet. And, it's super easy and simple to implement right away. So I'm going to go ahead and talk to you about three ways that I use visuals in our home to increase communication and increase understanding of language for all of my kids. And just a reminder, I have two deaf kids with cochlear implants and one typical hearing child. And this works for all of them equally. So, number one, the first thing that I use and I absolutely love is I use a visual timer for marking the time with our kids. So, visual timer is a timer that shows the time decreasing with like kind of a color block. So, after this episode, don't go yet. After you listen to this episode, go look on Amazon for kids visual timer and you'll see what I'm talking about and it'll make sense, when you look at that. On Amazon, there's a ton of them, tons of different colors. They're really fun. But why does this work for kids? Because time is an abstract concept for kids. And a lot of frustrations happen when you say, for example, that they have 5 minutes until rest time or 5 minutes until screen time is up. And then the 5 minutes is up and your child gets mad. And they get mad because they don't understand how long 5 minutes actually is or isn't. They just have no concept of how long things take and what is 5 minutes, what is 10 minutes. That's something that they learn a lot later, especially not as younger children. And I noticed personally, that my kids were getting really frustrated. And I understand that from just a practical and personal point of view that, I'd be like, oh, it's time to go clean up your trains in 3 minutes. And then they would have like a meltdown after 3 minutes. I'd be like, I gave them 3 minutes. It's just that they didn't understand or have a concept of what 3 minutes was or like how long it was. So I started using the visual timer to just mark the time with our kids. And we now use this for everything in our home as much as possible. I use this timer, I put the timer on for they have, however more minutes left before it's time for bedtime. I use it for time left before we transition to another activity. I use it to show the time that they have for timeout or rest time. I set the timer for how much time they have left before screens are put away. I also set the timer in the morning before school. So, when they're eating, my kids tend to eat slowly in the morning. So I set the timer for like 30 minutes before school, about, however long we have until we have to leave to go to school so that they can kind of eat accordingly and watch the timer decrease and know like how much time that they have left. I also use this for my 3-year-old sometimes eating. In general, she can be a slow eater, and sometimes I'll set the timer and say, okay, you have 10 more minutes to finish this food. And that's great because she can sit there and watch the timer and she can see like how much time is left. And it does help her like finish the food in an appropriate amount of time. And also, what I love about this visual timer is that it's so great because the kids don't have to rely on hearing the ding. So we can use this timer even if my kids aren't wearing their cochlears and they can't hear because there's a visual part to it. And also the visual part makes it much more obvious that the time is running out. Sometimes timer, even if you set a traditional timer, it's kind of hard to tell when the time is moving and like see the time moving. So this visual timer makes it very clear like when the time is decreasing. And honestly, I like accidentally trained my kids on this timer, but you can totally do it with your kids too. So I've done this timer so much with my kids that now when it goes off, they automatically like transition to the next activity or whatever we were going to do after. So, I gave you the example. I put the timer on to tell them how much more time they have in the morning before we have to get in the car to school. When the timer goes off, the kids literally get up and walk to the garage and get in the car, like without me having to tell them. So this also just gives kids a lot of independence as well, which we're going to talk about next. But it makes your life a little bit easier too, because you can train them to move on to the next activity themselves when the timer goes off. So that was my visual timer. I love it. So the second thing that we use every day in our home is a visual daily schedule. So this is our basic daily schedule in pictures. And each picture shows a different part of the daily schedule. Like, for example, we have, a picture of food for breakfast, a picture of clothes for like getting dressed, a picture of like toothbrush for like brush your teeth at night, right? So it's like each step in your daily routine represented by a picture. So why do I love this? I love it so that my kids can keep up with where they are in the day and like what comes next in the day. I can stop answering questions about like what's coming next. And it also gives my kids a sense of autonomy and control over their day, which kids really like. So, contrary to like popular belief, kids actually don't like to be surprised. They want to know what's going on and they want to know what's coming next in the day. And this is especially important for deaf and hard of hearing kids because a lot of times deaf and hard of hearing kids, just by nature that sometimes they can't hear everything as well, get left out of information in the home. And that is unintentional. Like I know you're not trying to leave them out, but they may miss a step or miss something and they are sometimes a little insecure because they don't always know what's coming next. And so having the schedule, they can see what's coming next in pictures and know and understand how the day is going to flow. So you can do this one of two ways. You can create it if you're crafty. Okay, so you can Google like visual schedule. There's so many of them out there and you can like recreate it from a picture. But you can take a piece of construction paper and draw lines for morning, afternoon, and night. And then you can either draw the schedule on the construction paper if your schedule stays pretty much the same every day, or you can laminate the paper that says morning, afternoon, at night. And then you can go do clip art for each picture that represents different parts of your day. Laminate that whole sheet, cut out each individual picture, and attach each individual picture with Velcro to Velcro it onto the construction paper for like the morning routine, the afternoon, and the night routine. I am not crafty. So I bought mine, which is up my alley, and I bought mine from Mighty and Bright. So Sarah Olsher, who is the founder of this company, was on our podcast. And right now, I don't know the episode, but I will link the episode in the show notes. And I highly recommend that you go back and listen to that episode that we did together because she actually has a daughter who has hearing aids. And we talk about in that episode what a visual schedule is and exactly how to use it. And then once you get it set up, whether you buy it, there's also a ton on Etsy that you can buy too. So once you buy it or create it, you put it on the refrigerator and then there's your daily schedule and you just reference it as you go out through the day and guide your kids like through the day. But it just really helps them to visually see, how the day is going to flow. So A third visual system that I love having that I've actually done very recently with my kids as they're getting a little bit older is a meal planning system for kids. So I noticed that my kids are now old enough, they're 5 and 8 and 3. So my 8-year old and my 5-year old are old enough to start putting together their own breakfast and lunches. I still like to do dinner. But specifically, I'm using the summer right now to train my boys how to put together their own lunches for school next year. So I created this visual system in my home to help them learn to create a healthy lunch or breakfast. And this is great because kids want jobs and kids actually behave better when you expect more of them in the house. And I actually know this because we recently did some parent coaching with us and with our kids just to understand how to lay down boundaries better as kids are getting older and take care of some frustrations, which were not due to language, just due to maybe not communicating boundaries as well as we want to. And one of the things that our parent coach told us is that if our kids start misbehaving, we need to give them more jobs because they're telling us that they want us to expect more out of them, which I thought was so interesting because that seems like counterintuitive a little bit. You think kids don't want more jobs, but actually they're asking for more responsibility and they're asking you to expect more of them. And so part of this meal planning system is me expecting more of my kids. They can totally put together their lunch for school. So I don't have to do it anymore next year. They're going into third grade and kindergarten. But I set up the system because I want to make sure that they know how to put together a healthy meal and we're starting to lay the foundation of what goes into, a healthy meal and how to put that together. So how I did this is once again, you can probably buy something. I have a dry erase board on our refrigerator that I got on Amazon, and I drew lines on it and wrote the categories for protein, fiber, dairy, fruit. You could also put like protein, carbs, dairy, and fruit. And then I went and found individual clip art and made little squares of all the things that my kids typically like to eat in each of those categories. And then I laminated that with self-laminating sheets from Walmart. They were my favorite for all kid activities. They were my favorite when I taught high school to laminate my stuff, self-laminating sheets. And then when I laminated them, I cut them out and I put Velcro on the back and Velcroed each picture of food to like the right category. So now I'm training my kids, like I'm actually in the process of doing this, that when they create a meal, they need to have one thing from each category in the meal. And the fun part about the Velcro is they can take off, whatever they choose from each category and kind of like spread them out on the counter so that they remember what to put in their plate or what to put on their lunchbox. And then when they're done with it, they can Velcro them, back onto the board. Like I said, if you're not crafty, which I know that I'm not, I just kind of had all the pieces to do this. But I highly recommend and respect if you go out and buy it. Or like I said, there's a ton of different printables and things that you can get on Etsy for this as well. So those are the three main visual systems that I use in my home every day to help my kids navigate and communicate with us in a different way that doesn't necessarily need to have language. And, I found that using visual systems have been really helpful in our house to not only help with frustrations and communication, but also so that my kids can be more independent in the house and take on more jobs. It's also personally helped me to take some stuff out of my own head and put it in a visual system so I don't have to think about it anymore. And this can work with any age, and you can adjust it and add on as your kids get older. I know people who use a system or different types of visual systems for their teenagers. And these are also especially good for people or kids who have ADHD because it takes you through a process step by step, and then you don't move on to one step until you completed the next. So there are a lot of applications for visual systems. I'm just talking about like the communication point for for deaf and hard of hearing kids, but there's a lot of different ways that you can use them. And I want to invite you to grab a coaching call with me if visual systems is something that you've thought about, but you're not sure how they would work in your home. You're not sure which one to implement first, because I definitely recommend you implement one system, get really good at using it and then implement another one. So I implemented all of my things, one at a time, basically. If you want someone to walk you through that, I can help talk to you about, how to use it in your house and how this might be beneficial in your home as well. Go ahead and grab that coaching call with me. I would love to talk to you and even your partner or spouse through, creating better nonverbal communications in your home for your kids to still understand. So grab that coaching call. Just email me at hello@raisingdeafkids.com and I'll get you hooked up with a coaching call. So I hope this episode today calms your soul. And as parents, we want the absolute best for our kids. And unfortunately, kids, and especially kids with hearing loss, do not come with a handbook. I want you to know that simply by being here and listening, you are doing a great job as a mom because you are learning and trying to find better ways to help your kids. I am so proud of your efforts, and I am so glad that you are here. I will see you next week. Bye. Hey, Mama. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds and subscribe to this podcast? I never want you to miss an episode and to be without valuable information to help you and your family. Also, please leave a quick written review for the show on Apple Podcasts. It lights me up to know this podcast is helping you. Now go check off the rest of your to-dos so you can love on your family today. And I'll meet you here every Tuesday and Thursday for podcast episodes to support your whole family in language learning. Ciao, Mama!